On this week's edition of New York Now, SUNY Chancellor John King joins us to discuss his State of the State address, student protests, and his vision for the university, complete with 4 key pillars. And then, after more than 3 decades reporting on the state capitol, Karen DeWitt joins us to discuss her retirement, legacy, and the biggest moments of her career. I'm Chantal Destra, and this is New York Now.
Today, the Senate majority will pass legislation.
I will fight like hell for you every single day, like I've always done and always will.
Passing these bills on the floor, making yet another stand.
Welcome to this week's edition of New York Now. I'm Chantal Destra. This week, a Siena College research poll showed Governor Kathy Hochul had her lowest favorability rating ever at 38% and lowest job approval rating at 44%. The poll comes just weeks after the governor's controversial decision to put congestion pricing on hold in New York City. And according to the poll, 45% of voters across party lines support that decision. In terms of leadership style, 36% of New Yorkers polled believe that Hochul demonstrates decisive leadership, and 44% of New Yorkers said that they do not believe Hochul cares about people like them. As we know, things are always subject to change in polling, especially given the times we're in, with the legislature out of session and this year's elections ramping up. We'll continue to monitor the polls as they come and bring you updates. Now turning to another topic. SUNY Chancellor John King has a vision for the university centered around 4 pivotal pillars. We recently sat down with the Chancellor to unpack what those are and his goals for the university moving forward. Here's that conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chancellor.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. Now, naturally, I wanted to get into your State of the University address. This year, your speech focused largely on 4 pillars, one of them being student success, and then research and scholarship, DEI, and economic development and upward mobility. So why were these specific pillars important to you and your overall vision for SUNY?
You know, when I joined in January 23, I laid out those pillars with our Board of Trustees as the path to ensuring that SUNY is the best public higher education system in the country. And I really wanted in the speech to explain all the progress we're making. We had enrollment up for the first time this past September in a decade. That was fantastic. We are replicating the ASAP program, which helps students to not just start but finish college on 25 of our campuses. We've got huge momentum in the semiconductor industry around AI research. We continue to diversify our student population and our faculty, and we know that our diversity makes us stronger. And SUNY is playing a key role in economic development in every region of the state. And I wanted to tell that story so folks would understand how much momentum we have, and also how appreciative we are of Governor Hochul and the legislature really investing in SUNY.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I thought was interesting was you really underscored getting students to fill out that free application for federal student aid being one of the main challenges that SUNY faced over the past year. So what will be your strategy to continue to empower and educate students to fill out that application?
Yeah, this is such an important issue. You know, that application is the gateway to federal financial aid, state financial aid, and because of changes that the federal government is making to the form was delayed this year. There were a number of technical glitches. And so as a country, we're actually behind on FAFSA completion. We're about 16% behind in New York. So we've got a lot of work to do to make sure that every student knows about it. Fortunately, we have great partnerships with K-12, with other higher ed institutions, and we're doing a lot to get the word out, offering information sessions. We've got a FAFSA completion corps, which is part of the AmeriCorps program, where our SUNY undergraduates are trained to help families complete that FAFSA. We are doing events with school districts to make sure that folks in school districts are doing all they can to help students get through the FAFSA. And we're doing tons of reminding because folks need to remember the importance of this form. You know, last year in New York, because of students not completing the form, we left more than $220 million on the table in federal financial aid that students could have used to go to college. So this is a hugely important issue. We've got a lot of work to do to complete this financial aid cycle. And then the governor and the legislature adopted a really important change that starting next year, FAFSA completion in New York will be universal. So K-12 will work with higher ed to make sure that every student completes the FAFSA form.
And another aspect of the state budget this year had to deal with, of course, funding for SUNY Downstate. There was a lot of conversation about whether or not funding will be included to save the hospital. So what was your reaction to how things eventually are, kind of netted out?
Look, we're really pleased that the governor and legislature are taking this challenge on along with us. We laid out the challenges at Downstate, a $100 million a year deficit, operating deficit, really the risk of closure this summer if we didn't get additional help from the state, as well as significant capital challenges, a building that's really in disrepair and at risk of catastrophic failure. We laid that out. The governor stepped up with a plan for how to address it, and working with the legislature, adopted essentially the plan that the governor initially laid out. $100 million to cover this year's deficit, $100 million to cover next year's deficit, $300 million in capital investment, and working with the legislature and stakeholders, the governor also and the legislature set up an advisory board, community folks who will work with us at the state level to think through the future of Downstate, to think about the best investment of that $300 million in capital funds, and importantly, the budget allows for the advisory board to consider up to $750 million in capital investment. So the opportunity to come back in the next legislative session and get some additional capital investment. That's helpful as we think about how do we ensure the strength of the Health Sciences University and continue to improve healthcare in the community.
And this past year, there was a lot of unrest on college campuses across New York State, including at Stony Brook University and at SUNY New Paltz regarding the ongoing war in Gaza. So what was your reaction to the way that these individual schools responded to the unrest? And what will be SUNY's position on student protests heading into the next year?
Look, the top priority for us is student safety, right? We've got to make sure that our students are safe in a supportive environment. We, of course, value free speech and freedom of expression and the robust exchange of ideas, but that's not limitless. That can never turn into discrimination or harassment, can never turn into violence or vandalism, and can never turn into disrupting the education of one's classmates. And so, we are very clear. We have content neutral time, place, and manner restrictions, right? You can't block the entrance to a building, for example, to prevent your classmates from going to class. And so there are rules around how free expression is exercised, and we're going to continue to make sure that our campuses are safe environments. I think the hard thing in this moment is we continue to condemn the horrific terrorist attack on October 7th. We continue to stand with the people of Israel against terrorism. And at the same time, we're all heartbroken seeing the loss of civilian lives in Gaza. And part of what's hard in this moment is people have to be able to hold both things in mind, that we can condemn Hamas, we can wish for the safe return of the hostages, and at the same time, we can have tremendous sympathy for the innocent lives lost in Gaza. And I hope that as we go into the fall, we can have a thoughtful, robust discussion about the path forward, the right policy solutions, but do so in a way that is respectful. And one of the areas I focus on in the State of the University speech was on the need for civic engagement and civil discourse, for us to practice in our classes, in our extracurricular activities, in our dorms, how do we disagree agreeably? How do we have a conversation where we question not just the assumptions of the person we disagree with, but our own assumptions? How do we have a spirit of learning about our civil discourse? And I hope that's what we'll see going forward.
And going back to your State of the University address, this was, of course, your second time giving that address. So what were some of your biggest learnings from your first year compared to your second year? Was there anything that sort of surprised you? Well,
one of the first things I did when I started was I visited all 64 campuses and had the chance to talk with students, faculty, administrators, community members about each of our campuses. two things struck me. One is there's such extraordinary diversity of opportunities across SUNY. We've got SUNY Maritime. If you want to train for the commercial shipping industry and make six figures, come to SUNY Maritime. If you're really passionate about the environment, we've got our Environmental Science and Forestry College in Syracuse. Amazing programs. We've got tremendous arts programs at Purchase and Fredonia, and tremendous music program at Potsdam. Whatever you're passionate about. You want to be an engineer? We've got great programs at Binghamton, at Stony Brook, at UB, at SUNY Poly. So many opportunities. You're passionate about AI. So many learning opportunities at UB, at UAlbany. So the range of options, I think, is really exciting, and I hope we can help every New Yorker understand what great opportunities are available at SUNY. The second thing that struck me is so many challenges that impact student success. The need for more mental health services on campus. Students who are struggling with food insecurity and housing insecurity. Students, particularly in our community colleges, who are struggling with transportation, just getting to campus. Students who are struggling with how to navigate having a disability and making it through school. The good thing is, because of the generous support from Governor Hochul and the legislature, we've been able to dedicate resources to each of those areas. $10 million to expand mental health services, $10 million to expand supports for students with disabilities. We've been able to launch an effort to strengthen our food pantries across our campuses, and also to work with students to complete the SNAP application so they can get federal assistance to address food insecurity. So we're working hard to get rid of those obstacles for students, because we want students not just to come to college, but to graduate and have access to success in our economy.
And as you head into the summer and into your third school year leading the university, what would a successful semester or school year look like for you?
Yeah, well, we want to continue to make progress in each of those areas, right? In student success, we want to make sure that we continue to grow as a system, and that our students are graduating at even higher rates. We want to make sure that we are leading the way on research and scholarship. The governor launched a public-private partnership that will bring $400 million to New York to invest in artificial intelligence, invest in our leadership in artificial intelligence, funding from the state as well as philanthropy and private dollars. That is going to lead to a supercomputing site at UB, which will make us a national leader in that sector. So we want to continue to grow our work and our leadership in research and scholarship. We want to be a voice nationally for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Push back on these states that are banning the teaching of the truth about our history, things like denying the history of slavery. We want to push back on that and say, no, at SUNY in New York State, we're going to tell the truth about our history. We're going to prepare students to live in a diverse society and work in diverse employment settings. And then on economic development, we have so many opportunities to lead in preparing the healthcare workforce we need, ensuring the success of the growth of the semiconductor industry in New York. As Micron comes to Central New York, they're going to need lots of folks to work there. We want to prepare them. Global Foundries needs lots of folks to work there. We want to prepare them. And then the leadership opportunities in cutting edge areas like quantum physics, where really great work is happening at Stony Brook, or battery technology, where really great work is happening at Binghamton. So keeping that momentum going in the next year is critical.
Absolutely. Well, certainly a lot to look forward to. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here for now, but we thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much.
And we were speaking with the Chancellor of the State University of New York, John King. And for more on the Chancellor's vision for SUNY, you can visit our website. That's at nynow.org. Now turning to another important topic. After more than 3 decades covering state politics, longtime Capitol reporter Karen DeWitt is retiring. Karen's work through the years has embodied thorough reporting, savvy political insights, and an unwavering dedication to being fair. We sat down with Karen to discuss her contributions to New York politics and her legacy. Thank you so much for joining us today, Karen.
I'm happy to do it.
Now, you've had quite the career covering state politics spanning over 3 decades. Now, before we get into your achievements through the years, I wanted to understand what initially got you interested in covering state politics and what kept you focused on the beat over the last 30 years.
Well, I think like anything, I just kind of fell into it. I moved back to this area after college at SUNY Geneseo, and I actually had an internship at WXXI that got me going. I should mention, because WXXI is a big part of our network, and I just worked at some local news stations. There was an all-news radio station. It was kind of precursor to like what we have for Spectrum News right now, and it was just a good training ground for young people to, run around and cover all kinds of news and different things, be live on the air. And I found that I actually like politics better than, covering fires or crimes or all the other things that you do.
Yeah.
Mario Cuomo was governor then, and he was a big national figure. You had New York City Mayor Ed Koch, who would come to town occasionally. It was all these like larger-than-life characters going around the state capitol, and I was very intrigued by that. And I thought, well, it's right here, right where I am. And I got in through the back door. There was a stringer job for 1010 Wins, which was a very big all-news station in New York City. So I got the stringer job, and then I just, made my way with magazine articles for Adirondack Life. I worked for Alternative News Weekly, Metroland for years, and I just kind of patched it all together for a few years. And then this public radio network job came about. It only was 2 years old, the network. Someone else started it before me. Had 4 stations, and I was like, okay, I think I have like the skills. I like know how to be in the air, but I also know the journalism skills that you get from all those magazine editors, saying, do a little more here, dig in a little more there, or, change this around. And then, I got that job in 1990, and it just sort of grew from there to 10 stations. And then about sometime in the mid-90s, one of the people who worked here, one of my predecessors, Michael Carisse, said, we're starting a weekly reporters roundtable, and you're going to be on it. And at first I was like, no, I'm not going to be on that. I don't want to be on TV. But he sort of pulled me, dragged me, kicking and screaming to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And how would you say the show New York Now impacted your career?
Well, as you probably know, Chantel, from being on TV for a year now, like all of a sudden, everything you say is more important. Like people listen to you more. I'm sure as you go around the Capitol, people look at you and say, oh, I see you from TV. So even though you're the same person doing the same things, it's just a bigger stage. It's also fraught with, all kinds of, being nervous about it and, and like the stakes are higher, but I think it's a good thing. And I really do feel like being on TV did make my career, and being able to be on a reporter's roundtable, give my 2 cents week in and week out, just really made a difference.
And, at the time when you first started in the state politics beat, you were one of very few women reporters in the LCA. So how did that reality impact your career through the years?
Well, actually, there was a group of older women who were there before me, maybe 10 years before me. I'm really grateful to them because they kind of broke the ice with, the all-male environment. So it was a little bit easier for me. But there were a lot of times where there'd only be like 2 women reporters, and there were more reporters then. There'd be like maybe 40 men coming in and out, and 2 women. I don't know, I just got kind of used to being in the man's world, the reality, but sometimes it was hard in a big press conference, with the governor speaking in a high-stakes press conference to get your question in. You'd have to really fight because the men would all be like shouting, competing with one another, and try to just find that little angle and get in. So it was different, but I don't know, I mean, that's what I grew up with. I was kind of more used to the boys' culture, the jokes, the cynicism, the never revealing anything too personal about yourself. I think women will do that more. They'll like spill their guts, which is fun too, but I didn't have that experience probably for the first 20 years that I was there.
Wow. And not a lot of reporters in the LCA can say that they've covered the likes of David Patterson, Mario Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo, Kathy Hochul. So how would you describe the differences in covering each governor?
I know, it's kind of crazy that I've done it for that long. Well, Mario Cuomo, he was just a really great man. And maybe it's because I was younger and knew less. Like, I think I kind of looked up to him. He also talked a lot. He had a lot of news conferences. Like you can't even imagine now. He would sometimes have 2 a day.
Wow.
They'd be an hour long. And you'd be sitting there looking at your watch and saying, geez, I got to get going writing my news story. Is this going to end? Which, we have the opposite problem now. We don't.
Right.
We don't.
And would
get
there
to
be
see them.
a gaggle?
Well, a
following each one?
lot of times he would have us into his office and we would just sit around and, he was really good about answering people's questions. But yeah, there'd be lots of gaggles. There was lots of access. But there wasn't the internet then. So they needed us more. I think, modern day, it's been a lot different.
Yeah. And do you have any favorite stories or moments that you've worked on during your time at New York Public Radio?
I think it's the big ones that everybody knows about, right? Going back to Elliot Spitzer having to resign because he was patronizing prostitutes, which was just such a shocker to everyone. That was a very shocking day.
Yeah.
Also, David Patterson being sworn in as the first African-American governor. That was just like a very celebratory day. People were really jubilant. It was really fun. Patterson had a terrible time as governor because the Great Recession hit and it just was very, very difficult. And then, of course, COVID, the lockdown, suddenly being on Governor Andrew Cuomo's reality TV show every day with the briefings. All of a sudden, I had a bit part on this, national, international reality TV show. And at the same time, like at the height of the pandemic, 700 people a day would be dying. So it was just really an intense time. And then, of course, just the next year, Andrew Cuomo imploding. So all of that stuff was just really big dramas to witness. And that's only a few of them. I mean, then there's all the legislative leaders that went to jail or got convicted of corruption. Did the coup, we can't forget the coup where a group of rival senators took over the Senate. We had competing Senate sessions for a month. So just lots of crazy drama. And it made it easy to be a reporter because you had these characters to tell your narrative, tell your stories. So, they've certainly made it easy with all their antics for us, right?
Yeah. Are there any reporting threads that you may not have had the time or opportunity to really dive into in your career that you wish you would have?
I was thinking about that. Some of them currently that are going on, I think is the out-migration in New York State. I never seem to get to that bigger picture, and that's so complicated for so many reasons. You're going to have to do that story.
That's what I have to look forward to. Yeah.
And also, I think the income inequality, that's just a big thing that overshadows things in a way we don't always mention or understand and is causing a lot of the divisions in this society right now. So those are probably just the ones off the top of my head that I can think of.
Yeah. And you're often revered as the dean of the LCA. So what does that title and recognition mean to you?
Well, until recently, I refused to accept that title.
Really?
Because people started kidding that I was the one that was around the longest and maybe the most kind of outgoing person. I like to not mentor younger reporters, but at least talk to them, try to be their friend, see where they're at and everything. Yeah. And so for a while there, I was saying, no, I'm not the dean. I don't want to be the dean. And then I thought, I think women often reject titles in a way that men don't. And I thought, no, I can be the dean. I'm sure like many men before me were fine. If someone called them the dean, they'd be like, yeah, that's right, I'm the dean. So I was like, yeah, okay, I am the dean. I will take it. I will accept that title.
Awesome. And what advice would you give to the next generation of reporters covering state politics?
Well, I think that you have to want to do it more than you want to do anything else in your life. Otherwise, it's just going to be too hard. And you're going to get frustrated because there's so many obstacles and frustrations. I think you're going to have a lot of different jobs. You're not going to have one job for 30 years like I did. I don't see that happening. And I think you're going to have to go over to what we used to call the dark side, which is, being in PR or, being a spokesperson for a politician. And it's easier to go back and forth. And my advice would be every time you do that, make sure you up your salary. Like use that as a negotiation because these are generally, not paid as well as the people are worth. But yeah, it's going to be tough. But hopefully journalism is going to survive in some certain core way. That's my hope.
And what legacy are you hoping to have in the LCA and in the larger New York State political beat? How are you hoping that you'll be remembered?
That's so hard to answer because I didn't even know I had a legacy until this whole retirement things happened and people been saying those kind of things. I'm like, really? I just feel like I just went to work every day, came on this show every week and just tried to do my best. But I guess I would say, being fair, because I tried to develop a reputation for fairness, and people would say, yeah, you're a really fair reporter, and that would reinforce it. I'd go into an interview thinking, I don't like this person, or I feel this way about this, and I'm like, remember, you're the fair reporter. You have to be fair.
Yeah.
So I guess, just try to uphold, the values of journalism, because I feel like they're really important for democracy.
Well, we at New York Now thank you for your contributions to the show and for your dedication to New York State politics. We wish you the absolute best in your well-deserved retirement. Thank you so much for taking the time to connect with us today, Karen.
Well, thank you, and good luck to you, because you are the next generation now to take the show and, fly with it.
Thank you so much. And we were speaking with Karen DeWitt, longtime Capitol Bureau Chief for the New York Public News Network. As we underscored in that conversation, Karen's contributions to the New York Now show have been invaluable through the years. For more information on the career and legacy of Karen DeWitt, you can visit our website. Again, that's at nynow.org. You can also subscribe to our newsletter by going to newsletter.nynow.org or by scanning the QR code on your screen. Well, that does it for this edition of New York Now. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next week.
Funding for New York Now is provided by WNET,